Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Excuse me, it's beer o'clock over here.
Oh, right on.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So I can see Adam, but who else does it say is on the line with you, Adam?
Alisa.
Oh, no, it says Adam and Tara.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Tara's my wife. She usually does these podcasts with me, but we can't tonight because we have 2 children, and yeah. So she's here in spirit, but she's usually here, and we do the interviews together, but COVID has kind of threw a wrench in that whole thing, just because trying to watch 2 kids at the house gets kind of hectic, but
fair enough.
Yeah, I have 2 dogs here, and coming home is always crazy.
Yeah, we got a dog too during this pandemic.
Oh my god,
was cool, but it's been even more chaotic in the house now. But
yeah. Wow. What kind of dog did you get?
It's a terrier schnauzer mix. We adopted him, and it was really bizarre because I've adopted dogs in the past where it goes through this whole process where they come to your house and it's like this whole, meeting thing. But this time around it was, do you want the dog? Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Just sign the check, because COVID had happened, and they were like very quick to give away the dog, which was cool for us, but hopefully that won't cause an issue once everybody gets back to work, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, one of the dogs I have, he's a foster, so people have started applying about him, and I wonder how they're going to handle that process. Maybe it's the same deal. Maybe it's just like, here you go.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because, like I said, they just were like, "Oh, you want him?" We're like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, okay. Here, just sign over the paperwork." We're like,
"Oh my gosh.
All right, bye."
That's so funny.
Yeah, but
well, good luck. I heard.
Thank you.
Terriers are kind of hard to. They can be stubborn.
Yeah, he's a little stubborn, but
yeah,
we're making do. But thank you guys so much for doing this podcast with me. I really appreciate it. I've been a fan of your band for a number of years, since probably 2012, 10 or 12, when I was working in San Francisco. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys doing this. So our podcast is about your journey in the music industry and how you guys got to where you are today. We can touch a little bit on the records and, of course, the new album that's out, or coming out. So. Cool. Well, Alisa, how did you get into music originally? I know you guys are both from New Zealand, correct? The same town in New Zealand?
Gosh, how did I get into music? Well, so I have to go way back into my earliest memories. My parents were from Laos, and they immigrated to New Zealand in 1979. And my dad, he was in a band in Laos. When he came to New Zealand, a bunch of his friends, they formed like a Lao community band. So I kind of grew up around a lot of Lao folk music, not a lot of English music, but my dad sung. And just growing up in that kind of environment, I was always singing. I always loved singing. I always loved music. It was something I was always drawn to the most. In my earliest years, like I would search for ways to be part of it. I would enter singing competitions, talent quests, the choir, vocal groups. I would take guitar lessons. It was just something I was always searching to be a part of or participate in somehow. Mm-hmm. So as I grew older, it just kind of like, I grew more serious about it. And it wasn't until I finished high school, I went on a gap year, which is what a lot of people do who are from the Commonwealth. They travel before they go to university. Mm-hmm. And I decided that I didn't want to go to university and get like a degree in something that I wasn't passionate about. I was like, you know what? I'm going to enroll into this music school in New Zealand, which is where I met Thom. And I'd never been in a band before. I've entered like the rock quest on my own as like a solo artist with an acoustic guitar, and I would play songs that I would write. But I met Thom, and then we formed this band, and then the rest is history. It's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. So what were those early songs that you were writing? You just play them for, like, did you go and do local open mic nights and stuff?
Oh,
Did you ever
no,
perform?
no.
Oh,
I reckon it was like old school bedroom styles, but I did perform at Talent Quests and the Rock Quest where you have to play like original songs.
oh, you do have to
So
play original there.
you
Okay, I
have to
wasn't
play
sure if you had a
original
covers.
songs. Yeah, no, you have to play original songs, and there are judges that give you notes and stuff. I didn't
Oh,
get
wow.
through past like the heats, but they were like, keep writing, keep performing. You know, they were very encouraging and very nice. But yeah, that's very bridged.
The Rock. I love that you're talking about the Rock Quest. The Rock Quest is like Battle of the Bands for high school students in New
Yeah.
Zealand. It's like a countrywide thing.
It's a big deal if you're a kid, you know, like
Okay.
Yeah, Alisa, you missed all the context there. You're just like going on about the Rock Quest. Like,
Well, I'm glad that you interjected there. Yeah, it was a big thing to do, but also traditionally, often bands would enter, and I'm like, well, I'm
Oh,
Disney.
okay.
I'm gonna go against the rules here. I'm just gonna enter and see what happens.
Sure.
Yeah, I was scared, but willing to do it anyway. So.
Uh-huh. What did those songs sound like? Did you take any of that influence from what your dad was playing and to what you were writing?
My dad was singing Lao folk music, so A, it wasn't in English, and B, it's like a whole nother like music scale and
Okay.
instruments. No, but the Western music that I did grow up listening to was like Nat King Cole, Boyz II Men, Mariah Carey, Celine Dion. My
Okay.
brothers listened to like Oasis and Nirvana and Tears for Fears, like such an eclectic mix. And my sister, she was obsessed with like George Michael and Duran Duran and Wham. So it was like quite the melting pot.
Sure.
But when I first started, I wanted to be a folk artist. I really love like guitar, vocal music. So I listened to, there's a folk, wow, she's kind of folk pop now, but her name's Bic Runga. She was like a big influence on me because she is like part Asian, part Maori, and she was like the first person that I saw in a public forum who did music who looked like me. So I just thought like acoustic folk music was the way that I should start because of that.
That's cool. That's awesome. What song did you perform? Did you have to like audition to get into the school?
Yeah,
the university school?
I did, and I played Bic Runga's, she has a song called Sway that was on an American Pie soundtrack, and her song being on the American Pie soundtrack actually broke her in the States.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I played that song and I got in.
Very cool. And then you met Thom. So Thom, how
Yeah.
did you get into music originally?
when I was a kid, I was my father played guitar and was a folk musician, and so he was always playing songs when my brother and I, when we were really little, we liked hearing him play the guitar. It was really nice. We had requests and stuff. And then he kind of showed me some guitar when I was like, about 10 years old. And then that was like also when I started getting into rock music. Just me and my friends, when we were about that age, were really into like rock music. And it wasn't like at school all the kids around us were into the same stuff. So we went straight in hard. Like the first CD I ever got was Tool, Anima. And I was like,
gosh.
yeah, I was 10 years old and I love that. It's like one of my favorite albums to date.
And
And
it's a great record.
yeah, it's awesome. And that was like my favorite band growing up. I mean, it's still kind of like is one of my favorite bands. But like, so that was like my favorite band at 10 years old.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
it was just straight into Antichrist Superstar, Marilyn Manson, and then kind of all the new metal bands that sort of came in the wake of all that stuff, and like the late 90s, that I just loved that music as a kid. So then I got into playing guitar and was really into rock music. So yeah,
That's quite
and
a distance from what you guys are doing or what you're doing now with the Naked and Famous, right?
I mean, see, that's what you think. If you listen hard enough, you can hear some like Wes Borland riffs And
Oh, really?
you know what I mean? In the negative famous.
Yeah.
The influence is there. The influence is there.
I'll have to
But,
really pay attention next time I listen to it.
When Tom and I met, we both bonded over. I worked in a record shop when I met Tom, and we both bonded over our love for like Massive Attack, Smashing Pumpkins, Björk, PJ Harvey, TV on the Radio, Block Party, a lot of like old 90s rock type, music from that genre. So even though we have like such eclectic music tastes that growing up, when we met around the time we were 19 or 20, like that's what we were both listening to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then, so you both kind of had those influences going into what is the Naked and Famous. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So Tom, you're into that heavier stuff. Did you start a band in high school or anything?
I was in bands all the way through high school. Yeah. I was a drummer for a while. Always been a guitar player. That's my like primary instrument. And like so many guitar players in bands that aren't kind of good enough to become really like lead guitar players and not good enough to become singers, I became a kind of songwriter. It's a very typical, I feel like this is a really typical role for guitar players. You know, they sort of like use it as the kind of gateway instrument to being like a producer, or, you know, like many producers are guitar players, you know, or pianists, you know, it's one of those sort of instruments. So I started writing songs basically as soon as I could pick up the guitar. I loved writing songs. And yeah, I was just in bands all the way through high school, like with excellent names and excellent haircuts. And yeah, I just did everything. There was like a phase where I was like in an Alice in Chains-esque band, which was pretty tight. I liked that band. I thought it was pretty good. We had a good name too, Path of Carnage. That was really good.
Path of Carnage.
Yeah. And then various sort of like Tool-esque wannabe bands, which they were always dreadful. You know, they were really bad. Kind of a little bit of a new metal band for a minute as well. But yeah, so I just, you know, I did that whole thing growing up.
So you're
which
playing,
was fun. It's great.
Playing like local shows and stuff. Did any of those bands go serious enough to like tour around New Zealand?
No.
Like that?
This is we never played any local shows. We played like
really?
school concerts and stuff. Like,
okay.
like it'd be like a school assembly, and like this gaggle of 15-year-olds gets on stage and plays like System of a Down, Chop Suey. You know what I mean? Like that's.
Tom went to one of the biggest. Tom went to one of the biggest, largest high schools in New Zealand. So.
Oh, okay.
You were able to turn your lunch times into like mini rock concerts.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, exactly. So I grew up around lots of musical friends. We were all in bands and playing together and starting new groups every week. We go busking a lot to get like. This is really funny. We were talking about this yesterday, but like Alisa was making fun of me because when I met her, I was still doing this. But we would go busking at the local like strip mall. I'm the equivalent of a New Zealand strip mall, and I'd like get just enough cash to top up my car for a couple of trips to the city and back, and like put what we would call like a $20 top up on your prepaid phone.
Yeah, your gas. Okay.
No, on your prepaid phone.
Oh, on your phone.
Like
okay,
A $20 top up was like the standard. That was like if you put $20 on your phone, it could get you X amount of text messages.
Sure.
So I got like the amount of times I went busking and saying like, oh God, like Under the Bridge by Red Hot Chili Peppers and Jack Johnson's Steal My Kisses. Those were good money makers.
And Ben Harper.
Yeah, no, that's Steal My Kisses.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No. Oh, yeah. No,
that's
no, Ben Harper.
That's
Ben Harper. Jack Johnson. What was the Jack Johnson song that I used to sing? You know, Alisa.
Bubbly Toes.
I don't know.
I'm not going to sing it right now. I've got the lyrics. The lyrics are appearing to me as I'm saying it, and like I don't want to sing them because I don't want to.
It was a hit from Jack Johnson.
Yeah,
I can hear it in my head, but I don't know the name of it.
That maybe. No,
Might just let it go.
Yeah, okay.
That one. Whatever that was called.
Yeah, we're going there. Cool.
I love that.
Anyway. Yeah, so I'm just
you're
like
busking? Yeah,
I'm just a regular
busking.
like rock and roll rat, you know what I mean? Like I've just done it all, and that's like
he's like got his hair's dyed black. He's got black nail polish. He's kind of emo. He's outside of like
this
the
Wayne's World crap that I got
equivalent of New Zealand.
Yeah, but this Wayne's World crap that I've got. This Wayne's World crap that I've got going on right now is the first time I've ever actually had like long hair in a band.
Oh,
so,
I had to wait till my. Go ahead.
I had to wait till my 30s to like look legit.
There you go. So how did you get into the music school? Did you have to perform a song as well? The school that you met Alisa in?
No, I dropped out of high school because I got enough like we have like a slightly different system in New Zealand, which I think you have in some places in the States here, but I might be wrong, where if you get enough like credits, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a credit-based system. So you pass enough things throughout the year rather than one big exam right at the end of the year and you just get like a final grade. You build up credits, and then once you accumulate a certain amount of credits, you qualify for certain degrees of university entrance. So I had enough for what I wanted to do, which was music. I wanted to go into audio engineering. Mm-hmm. So I didn't do my last year of high school. I just kind of dropped out and then just like kind of
went straight there.
Around. Yeah. Just no. I like took the year off and just like got a job and stuff and bought a computer and started writing demos. And then as soon as we started,
course to me, you were doing the audio engineering course.
I was doing audio engineering, but then I started university and I started the audio engineering course and met Alisa, and then we dropped out really quickly. We were only there for like 2 months.
I was there for 6 months. I was there for 6 months.
Really?
Yeah. I was there for 6 months.
I think it was shorter, but
no,
you should.
I was there for 6 months because my last recital that I had to do for class, it was in the 6 month mark. Because throughout the course that I was taking, we were studying different genres of music, and so I had already completed maybe like the first 3 of that year, and we were on the 4th one. And you had to learn how to do like 3 covers from the genre we're studying and then also write an original.
Right.
So I definitely did 6 months.
Well, I'm glad Adam knows how to get through the mains course now.
It no longer exists. That school no longer exists, unfortunately.
Yeah. So anyway, we started university together and then we dropped out really quickly. So
was that
I just started working on the band.
Yeah, because you started the band. Is that why you left?
We started the band, so yeah, we just
that and I couldn't afford to continue being a student because I had to pay for rent. I had braces at the time, so I had to pay for my braces. I had a job to pay for them. Thom needed a job. I got him a job at the record store that I was working in.
Yeah. So we just dropped out and we started doing the band. I mean, honestly, my reasoning for dropping out was much more to do with being an 18-year-old male with a poorly formed prefrontal cortex. So just, I just was just feeling young and free.
Sure.
And just thought it was, I thought dropping out to do the band thing was like a good idea. Turned out it was, which is great.
It worked out for you guys.
It worked out well. Yeah. I remember my grandparents being a bit disappointed, but my grandparents saved to help me get into university, right? They gifted me some cash, which was not a lot, but it was enough to buy my very first MacBook, which I used to record our first 2 EPs. So they still helped me with my future. I'm very proud of that. I managed to not screw up entirely.
That's really cool.
Yeah. No, that was really kind of them. But yeah, we just dropouts and record store, like high fidelity styles. Like that was us. That was Lisa and I working at the record store in the day, going to gigs by night, getting like free tickets to shows from promoters and stuff. Anything we could hustle through being at our record store job. Like we were in it. We were really like on the ground level when it with like the beginning of our career, and we did that for a few years before we got fired from the record store because we were messing around on MySpace too much, and they were clocking up our MySpace hours. They were like they were like looking at the stations of where we worked, and they were like, they just saw that we were just on MySpace too much, checking the band profile, and at the time Facebook, which was new, which is wild to think about. But
I know.
yeah, and then we got fired, and we then just focused on writing the album.
Unemployment. We went on unemployment at that point.
Yep.
We decided that we were going to be poor and still do music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? You know?
It was great. No, and we're very lucky because New Zealand has some really incredible support systems for this. It's such a crazy concept to, I feel like, you know, America in general. But like, so Alisa and I went on an unemployment benefit, which is like, you know, government subsidy or for creative people. So basically there was a course designed to support you in whatever you wanted to do. If you wanted to become a photographer, or you were going to journalism or something like that, this was there to support those kinds of people. So Alisa and I were the recipients of this pretty wonderful support system that was set up. And then we had some help from New Zealand On Air, which is a government body dedicated to actually funding the arts. So they helped fund our first album.
Wow. I've heard this in Canada as well. I've talked to a couple artists from Canada that have gotten these grants from the government that help them fund records, and that's so rad. Yeah, we don't do anything like that here.
No, I know. But, you know, it's really interesting because it's, you know, to put it into perspective, I mean, New Zealand is such a small country and it has a small economy. So in order to sort of to participate in the music industry on the global scale, we actually really need this money. So, but it's interesting because it's, you know, it's kind of like, it's doing something for the sake of doing it. It's art for art's sake rather than art for financial gain. But at the same time, if something is funded well and does really well, it can be extremely lucrative. You know, like Lord's taken funding, we took funding, Broods took funding. Anyone from New Zealand that you've heard of has had financial assistance. And, you know, not everyone who gets funded has an international career, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth funding anyway, because, you know, not everything has to have some sort of financial massive return to be worth funding. It's a very different mentality to in America, where it's, you know, it's extremely capitalist in the mentality, where it's like, you know, winner takes all. You either fail or you win everything, you know. And I that's only starting to become very like apparent to me now at this point in my life. I realize the difference. It's like, I guess the mentality is like, I feel like the American system is like knowing the cost of everything and the value of nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm saying that whilst also like having worked very hard to live here and become a tax resident and, you know, spent the last 10 years of my life here. I mean, I'm here in Echo Park in LA. This is my house. You know, I'm committed to living here, but it's a very, very different system. But
we're just totally different with the arts, I feel like, in general.
Yeah.
You know,
and I'm saying this, you know, whilst being critical and also having benefited massively from the American music economy. Like, I built my career and my livelihood here based on how the system works. So it's a really interesting time to be alive as well, thinking about all this stuff, because the industry is changing so much. And I mean, what's happened over the last 6 months has really also put a lot of this stuff into view as well, because so many artists are struggling.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. I mean, the way you guys make money and the means of your entire job is shut down pretty much right now. You know, a lot of people can kind of work from home, but it's different for you guys, where you have to see people, you know, your fans, and play these shows to get by. It's awful.
Yeah, my dad called me recently. We hadn't spoken in a while, and he's like, "So, how's work going? How's it all going?" I'm like, "Well, Dad, because of COVID-19, we had some tours lined up, and I guess I'm not gonna be earning any money from that. So I'm just kind of cruising on my savings for now. Yeah, I don't know. He's like, oh, he's like, Shh. He was just like, wow, I can't believe it. I'm like, that actually so many people, so many creative people are in the same position.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, even you guys are in LA.
Yeah.
I'm in San Diego, so we're just south of you. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I mean, all the production in LA shut down for TV. Like I mean, everything. So
Yeah.
yeah. Everybody's just kind of sitting around, like, when can we go back and work?
Yeah, for the love of arts, just wear your mask and stay home.
Yeah, I know, for reals.
Also, just to chime in on what you were saying before about the live industry as well, because it's funny. There's a misconception. Like the misconception is that everyone makes their music from makes their money from playing live music, and it's crazy. It's funny because that's true for a very small percentage, I think. U2 makes a lot of money live. Coldplay does.
Sure.
There are so many acts in the middle whose costs are so high for going on tour that for us, we're a great example. We're like a medium-sized band. We can play theaters. Taking out a 5-piece band with a 5 to 7 person crew is a full bus. That's 7 people's wages for a week, and you have to pay those people every day you don't have a show, and you get a festival and you get this big decent fee for a festival. It's tens of thousands of dollars, and it sounds like a lot of money, and then you have to split that 5 ways, pay your manager, pay your and it disappears, and you're left with a week's wages at the end of this big fee. So it sounds like these situations, they look like they should be really lucrative, but they cannot be as well. And I think that's why maybe things like EDM, when the DJ sort of scene was kicking off in 2010 to 2014, there was this massive growth in the industry, and you saw people really just going for it because you can make so much money just being a DJ who just shows up and
you don't have there's no overhead. It's just
no
DJs,
overhead at all.
They play multiple locations in one night. It's just like
exactly. And it's just the most efficient, cost efficient thing. So for a band like us, live shows actually, they only start to become lucrative when you're doing them for a long time. If you have 6 months to a year of touring, you start to accumulate income along the way. You're earning money. It's great, but the main thing that they really, really serve is visibility. So you put out an album, then you appear in these towns and cities and countries. You get to go and see the local radio station and meet the people you need to meet who are promoting the show and shake some hands and all that stuff. And that stuff is really what gives you that kind of sense of promoting your record. And that being ripped away, you're left with basically, how many Twitter followers do you have?
Oh, yeah.
How well do your Instagram posts do? And is everybody going to blog this on your behalf or repost this on your behalf? Because who even blogs now?
Right. So, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Because now it's all now online. That's the only way you can really reach out to anybody.
And you're leaning on people's, your own fans' rabidness or and how involved they are. And for a band like us, we're not sitting there every day talking to the fans. So it's how do we promote this? How do we get this album out into the world?
Wow. It's
really difficult.
I know. It's definitely changed. It's weird because it's changed the entire planet. Talking to musicians in other parts of the country. I interviewed a guy this morning who was in Australia, and it's he's in his house and he's all the way on the other side of the world. It's just so crazy that literally everybody is in this together. And if we don't stay inside, like you said, wear masks, no one's ever going to get outside again.
Yeah.
But, it's wild. But I want to get back to you guys and starting the band and stuff. So you put 2 EPs out, right? Was that with just you two, or was that?
It was us, and we
just us. No, that was just us. The EPs were just us. We're
the EPs were just us, but also we would work at the record store, and then we would go back to our music college place that we dropped out of, sneak into the music studios and record them because Aaron Short, who was in the band, he left in 2017. He was actually like an audio engineer and like front of house monitor for the longest time. But he would always be there to help us, and we actually helped him. Recording our EPs actually helped him pass his qualification. So yeah.
Oh, so he got like a degree from your recording.
He got like a not a degree. What is it? A diploma?
Oh, okay.
Diploma, yeah.
That's awesome.
Not a diploma. What is it, Tom? Oh my gosh.
No, I didn't get one.
A qualification is what I'd say.
He said as he drank a beer. I don't know. I didn't go to school.
So yeah, we would record these EPs and just sneak into the studios of the college we dropped out of. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then do you start playing live? Like, what was like? How are you getting the EPs out to people?
Well,
oh yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
You go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say the scene at the time was it was like post the Strokes, right? Mm-hmm. So every band just was like wanting to beat the Strokes, and indie rock was thriving in Auckland. And I remember that there was a lot of like live gigging, and Alisa and I were living in the city. I say the city, you know, like not the suburbs. Like we were living in Auckland City, so we were kind of like connected to the kind of on the ground indie alternative music scene and all the live shows. We really had a good sense of what was going on. And there were all these bands popping up, and they were all playing all these shows and parties and house party shows and weekly gigs. And it was really cool, and there was a real vibe, but they didn't have any recordings. And I just remember thinking, like, this is such a cool scene, but this is not how I got into music. I got into music listening to records, and I got into music through recorded music. So I thought what we should do was just focus on doing that. So we kind of went into the studio knowing nothing about studios and knowing nothing about recording, but like that's where we set our goal, was to be recording artists, you know, before we had a band or anything. And then we put together this EP, found a local indie label who was super into it and wanted to put it out. And then our first release, the first thing the band ever did was an EP that got like a 5-star review in the Sunday Herald, like a newspaper, you know what I mean? Like the broadsheet newspaper.
And our single, the single off the EP was like #1 at like alternative college radio.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So we like came right out of the gate and aggravated all of the local indie bands, and everyone was so snide about it and upset because we hadn't done our time. You know, we hadn't played all the terrible house parties. So we just bypassed all that, no shows, and it was the only EP to ever have been reviewed in the Sunday paper. You know what I mean? Like it was like albums only, and this was an EP. So yeah, we had like great success right out of the gate. Just being strategic.
Sure.
And at the time, Alisa and I were really into EPs because we worked at a record store and we were into collecting vinyl and 7-inches and stuff, this kind of thing. So we wanted, instead of an album, we wanted to make 2 EPs. So we actually made an album of music before we were an international band. We made 12 songs, and
but then split them into 2 EPs.
Split them into 2 EPs, and they were recorded. So funny listening to them now because they're so lo-fi, and like we didn't know what we were doing.
I'm like,
but they're rad.
Yeah,
they're really cool.
Yeah, well, did enough to get a write up in the Sunday paper, and you know,
yeah. But the music we were listening to at the time was like that. Like it was very DIY. We were super into like TV on the radio and the years, and those 2 bands were actually really connected because Dave Seatek produced the first album, and I swear Nick Zinner plays on some of the TV on the radio songs. So there was a bit of a scene, and there were kind of rough recordings, and they weren't super polished and hi-fi. There's a lot of double track voices, and so we took a lot from that, and we were very, very into that kind of sound. that's how we did sound, and that's the kind of band we were. And then after that finished, we went and started working on Passively Aggressive You, which was a big sound and a big kind of sonic jump for us.
And a massive record for you guys as well.
Yeah.
It's so funny because
So
even though, is so eclectic, the songs are just so eclectic, you know?
So even though we were like an overnight success as far as like globally, we'd been a band for many years before we...
Right, before the actual record came out and Youngblood was this massive hit.
Yeah.
We had some revolving like band members, and it wasn't until like 2009 that we had like a solid lineup of players.
Okay.
So from 2006 to 2009, we just kind of like, hey, do you want to audition for our band? Hey, do you want to play in our band? Hey, we got this gig. Do you want to play? Bit haphazard.
Yeah, and then so you had the players together when you put out Passively Aggressive You.
Yes.
Kind of like the core players.
Yeah.
And when you guys put that out with Youngblood, like tell me about that song just blowing up and then getting you guys essentially to LA, right?
Yeah, it plucked us out of New Zealand and took us on a ride all around the world.
Right. Tell me about that.
It was chaos. It was really difficult it's difficult to track because it happened so quickly. But I remember an email exchange with our manager at the time, and he was like, Paul.
Oh, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, no.
Our first music manager was a female, and then, go.
Yeah, no. Youngblood, Alisa, Passively Aggressive You, 2010.
Yeah.
So I remember an email exchange at the time when it was like we were aiming for a blog. Like it was like ideally we'd like to be on these kinds of blogs or something like. And then one at the top was like Neon Gold, which was big buzzy blog at the time and a platform for a lot of music that from that era. They were like a singles label. So Passion Pit, Marina and the Diamonds, us, Ellie Goulding, like all these artists that went on to, kind of blow up, they all had like singles with Neon Gold, and they were this really great discovery place. And we were like, ideally it'd be good to, show up on Neon Gold, and like the next day Neon Gold like hitting us up, like we'd love to debut the song. So it was kind of like an omen, that things were gonna go well. And then so Neon Gold put the single out, and then it just kind of exploded because at the time they were a real massive tastemaker thing. And this is like blog days. This is like when people would type in Tumblr to visit Tumblr,
Right.
So it's pretty, which I miss. Like now I feel like social media is funny. It tells you to look at it.
Sure.
And I feel like the idea of Tumblr, you had to actively go and look for it,
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, it's like, hey, this person mentioned you in a comment or whatever. You're like, oh.
Yeah. It notifies you like an addictive slot machine.
Sure.
But yeah, and then it was just from that point, it was just everything you could imagine in a sort of classic music industry story, like just labels knocking on the door, flying us around the world.
Flying down to New Zealand from the States to like watch us play a live show.
Yeah. So it was pure chaos after that. And it's funny, it's odd now, 10 years on, thinking about all that stuff, because for us, it's actually, all that stuff was happening towards the end of 2009 and the beginning of 2010. So it is like a proper hitting 10 years for us.
Yeah.
And there are so many things, God, I just wish we had done differently. Like, I feel like we were not prepared in so many ways. We were not ready to capitalize on the incredible experience that we were lucky enough to be thrown into. But we were young and we just didn't know what was going on and took a lot of it for granted.
We were scared, but we just said yes and just dove right in,
Yeah, I was gonna say you kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what if you didn't? Then what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Just,
exactly.
Yeah.
I remember I remember when we were making our first record, and I was working part-time at this clothing store for this New Zealand designer who was so kind to me. She was like, of course, we can change your shift if you need to go and record your songs. I'm like, oh, thank you. And I remember being there working, and my manager called me up. He's like, hey, it's time to quit your job. We're going on tour. Just like the classic, like, what? I can quit my job.
Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that.
And
That was a
nothing-
really funny phase. Do you remember that when we were
Yeah.
like, we like had all the success brewing, but we were still kind of like working and
Yeah.
God, that was, I remember that feeling. I hadn't thought about that for years, but just that we had those conversations like, can I quit my job? That was
Yeah.
the thing we would talk about. Like,
Yeah.
that was the goal. Just not having to work the day job anymore, which
The goal was not having to work the day job and make music and make bodies of music and have a career. And I feel like we've been able to achieve that.
Yeah, I would say. Was that a pretty validating feeling, not having to work anymore, or was there?
Majorly validating, especially for my family. Like, I come from an Asian family, and my dad really valued education and work and getting a degree, you know, that kind of life. And it wasn't until, you know, and ever since I'd say, you know, no, I want to do music professionally, I want to do this like as my profession. They're like, you're not earning any money. And I'd get like the every so yearly check-in of like, hey, so did you ever consider going back to university? And hey, did you ever consider like maybe applying for jobs? And it wasn't until we got all these nominations for the New Zealand Music Awards, and I invited my entire family. We all invited our entire families to come to the New Zealand Music Awards, and they were just like, okay, yeah, we'll stop asking you about whether you should go back to university and get a job, because that night we had won like seven awards or something ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember the look on your parents' face? Like when you got the awards, just like, hey, see, this is it.
Oh man, they were just, it's just priceless. Like, they just looked really, really proud.
That's
really
amazing.
proud.
That's
Yeah.
really amazing.
And like really glad that I was defiant and you know, and wanting to pursue music and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Wow. And then did you guys go to LA on that record? Is that when you moved to Los Angeles, or were you working on the second album in Rolling Waves? Were you still in New Zealand at that time?
No, first record was our little launch pad. We were off the runway when that record came out. Came out in 2010.
Did you ask if we'd moved to Los Angeles?
Yeah. Did you move to LA?
We didn't. So
we were on tour for a couple of years.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
we moved-
Just straight.
Yeah, we moved to LA in 2012, basically, but we were visiting here a lot. And yeah, we toured for 2 years and didn't have homes or bases. We set up in England for a little while, like we were kind of in and out because we were signed to an English label. But we basically lived in America from 2012, even though we were here all the time, touring and like, you know, be here for months at a time.
Sure.
But yeah. So no, we were homeless for a little while as well.
Okay.
It was an odd feeling, but it was fun because we were resilient enough and grateful enough and excited enough to not mind, and to not also poor enough to not have any stuff or any belongings or responsibilities. So whenever we had like a break or any time off, we would just kind of find the nearest, most appropriate place to stay until the next tour.
Okay. That makes sense.
Which was honestly was a lot of fun. I really loved it. I mean, I don't know if I could do it now just because I feel like when you get older, your priorities shift and
Sure.
what you want is different. And although it feels exciting, it can just wear you down living like that, you know? So I think now we prefer to sort of like come home.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of a tour, rather than just hang out in like, I don't know, Birmingham for an extra week or something.
Yeah, and then jump on the road again.
Yeah.
So when you were living in LA then with In Rolling Waves, you guys wrote that record here, or were you not quite in LA yet?
Yeah, we
so
wrote In Rolling Waves. As soon as
Okay.
we came off the road, 2012, we wrote In Rolling Waves. Came out in end of 2013.
Yeah, and what was like the milestone from that record?
I think Coachella was
Playing
amazing.
Coachella, yeah.
2014.
Yeah, we did that, and that was like, it really just felt like a peak experience and moment. And honestly, I don't even really remember the festival that much because I was just so it was one of those weekends.
Sure.
But I think we definitely got the sense of how it was like how much we had an impact on people musically.
Mhm.
We were on the main stage at 6 p.m. right before
It's a
the
sunset
headliners.
slot.
Wow.
It was pretty special, pretty magic. You know, we weren't the biggest thing there by any means, but it was big enough to feel like, you know,
Massive.
we weren't just like another band amongst amongst like, you know, a really busy stage or something. So it just felt, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It was like one of the only moments I think I've been able to sort of step back and be like, whoa, I've achieved something. This is huge.
Yeah. What about seeing your name on that poster? I mean, just the poster, that must have been pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
And so often you're so in it, you're just doing it, so you can't really like step back from it and view it with any kind of perspective.
The equivalent of that in England was Glastonbury Festival, which we played in 2011, Tom.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Seeing your name on that poster is pretty.
And just that festival is so iconic in the UK. It's massive, and they have like a guest act every year, and the guest act, they don't announce it until like the day. The guest act was Radiohead.
Oh my God. Wow.
I remember it just being like this muddy, wet festival. We're all wearing like gumboots, Wellingtons, and just like trudging ourselves down to the stage they were playing and just hearing like Street Spirit play and everybody sing in the rain. It was just insane.
Wow. That's cool. That's really rad. Oh man.
So cool.
So Coachella, the big milestone from In Rolling Waves. That's awesome. What about in Simple Forms?
I think it was that was an interesting album. I want to say I was going to say it was two things of that stand out to me, and I don't know whether they're like, I don't know whether they feel like accolades per se, but we played the biggest festival in Europe. I think it's the biggest festival in Europe. I'm fairly confident, Ziget Festival. Yeah. And it was just, you know, we kind of didn't realize what it was until we were there, and just monstrous audience, huge show for us. Really special festival. We were super confident. We've been playing the show for a while. Something about it was just like, it's just never left my memory. We had a really incredible weekend, and yeah, that was pretty special. And then we played South Africa for the first time a few months later towards the end of the album cycle. And that was wild. And the show was like great. It was a big festival. Again, just like another massive festival that was like kind of mind-blowing experience. But the time that we got to spend in South Africa was pretty unreal. That was one of those moments where you get to travel as a musician and you get to do something and see something, and you're like, whoa, my job is pretty unreal. I'm pretty lucky to do this. So that was
in South Africa, we were staying on a safari resort. So
wow.
You could,
that's cool.
Book to go on a safari. So we were like, wow, this is crazy. This is never going to happen again.
Yeah.
So everybody was like booking like the 5 a.m. safari bus trip, and we would just go and like see these animals and like on safari, man.
Yeah, like out in the wild. Like, that's crazy.
Like, this is the wild thornberries, but not.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah,
That's
it's awesome.
awesome.
But that album itself felt like a massive achievement because it just, it took that album was a really difficult one to make. And after that record, that's when some of the live members that we've been playing with and hanging out for a few years left. They left after that record. So yeah, that was definitely difficult. It wasn't like it didn't feel like the most celebratory out of all the albums.
It's the most like exhausting.
Really?
It all
It's hard
felt
work.
super exhausted at the end of it.
Yeah.
Did you tour the album, or was it just kind of were you exhausted after it was finished?
It was exhausting.
Oh, okay.
It was like
Yeah.
exhausting to make, and it was exhausting to tour, and we were just all running on empty towards the end of it.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we,
then-
we toured that one.
Okay, and then that takes us to the record that's coming out, Recovery, right?
Recover.
No, Recover.
Recover. I was right the first time, and I'm like, wait a minute. Anyway, so that takes us to the new record,
Yeah.
Recover. And this is just you two on
There's
this
actually-
album.
It's just us two, but there was an album in between. We did like a like what we called a stripped back album. It's called A Still Heart.
Really?
Yeah, and it was kind of a distraction, but like a creative distraction. It was like versions of our songs entirely stripped back, and there's a bit of an explanation behind why we did it. Like Alisa and I felt early on like developing and coming up with our sound was the thing that we felt most proud of. We're not like virtuoso musicians or anything like that. So like landing on a sound like Youngblood felt like this huge achievement, right? And then we go to like radio stations and whatever, and we were having all the success, and people would be like, cool, can you do like a Mumford & Sons version of it? And we were like, no, we're not going to play this with an acoustic guitar. It's like, well, it's a bad analogy, but I was going to say it's like asking like Nirvana to like go stripped down. But then of course there is the
Unplugged in New York.
record.
Yeah. The MTV
But-
That's so
Unplugged
funny
record.
that you say that. I used to do, up until COVID, pretty much I used to work in radio, and I worked for two stations that you guys probably came by and tried to strip down versions of songs. I don't know if you
Or
ended up doing it.
refuse.
Yeah,
We probably refuse.
yeah, maybe you just refused and they did an interview or something. You did play some of one of the stations was Live 105 in San Francisco, and you guys did a couple of our shows when I was there, and one in San Diego.
We might have done something for 105. Yeah, but like
I don't think you
we-
played, but maybe you were on a bill for like one of our Christmas shows or something like that.
oh yeah, cool.
Sounds
Yeah,
about
BFD
right.
or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are fun. But yeah, so like the idea of an acoustic thing to us early on, it felt like a bit 90s, and sort of missed the point. It wasn't like the sonic identity that we landed on that had made us successful. So it just felt very like uncomfortable. And also we weren't good acoustic performers. We didn't know how to do these like bombastic, huge sonic wall of sound kind of tracks in this like folk environment. So it just kind of seemed corny to us. And then I guess we got that refusal kind of it dissipated over the years, and we kind of lightened up a little bit and decided to work on these versions, but we didn't want to do them half-assed. We didn't want to just like strum away at power chords. So we were like, okay, if we're going to do acoustic versions, we should like fully commit to this, and we have to go full Phoebe Bridgers on them. And so we did that, and we made this album called A Still Heart, which is like versions of the songs that are totally reinvented. It sounds like they were written as acoustic songs.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So there are
and
songs from previous records that you did stripped down versions of.
Yeah, it's a couple songs of each record.
It's kind of like a best of.
Was
So
it
that
hard
was
to
really-
decide on the songs, or did you know which ones you guys wanted to go into when you did it?
No, we knew. We had a good idea. It was very easy to develop them, but it was really nice because we got to break the songs down to their fundamental pieces and elements. And I think it was a really interesting experience for Alisa and I to like get to know our catalog in a very different way, and like kind of like re-understand what
Mhm.
we done from a different perspective.
It also
And I'm really proud
reinvigorated
of it.
it also reinvigorated our like creative process when we were experiencing loss from the band members leaving. So
Yeah.
it was like a very welcome distraction, and I'm really grateful that Tom and I were focused in on that because, you know, it's we felt pretty defeated when they left. It was just like, oh man, like
Mhm.
what are we gonna do? So being able to take the songs that already existed, not really having to write them, but being able to look at them in a different light was like a very invigorating and nourishing process for us.
Yeah, kind of like a therapeutic process for
Yeah,
the two of you to sit down and be
Yeah.
like, okay, it's just us now.
yeah,
Let's look at these songs and figure out and not relearn them, but like like you said, take
yeah,
another look at them.
No,
yeah,
we had
Different look
to,
at
you're
them.
right. We had to relearn them. We had to like honestly just as if they were fresh songs. It was you're right. It was kind of like starting again. And subsequently, like made us feel, I think, more confident for beginning this record again as the two of us and going back to like how we put the EPs together. It was
Yeah.
like, returning back to being 18 again. So we had to almost like become a new band,
Mm-hmm. So
which was hard.
I could imagine. Yeah. So you had become a new band. Have you guys played live since the departure of your other members, or?
we did. We played our first show this year in March before COVID hit in Australia. We were
Okay.
playing these Australian festival shows called the Wine Machine Tour. We had done weeks and weeks of pre-production, auditioning new drummers. We found kick-ass female drummer who actually drums for Cyndi Lauper. Her name's Caitlin
Wow.
Califas. She's just such a boss. And Luna Shadows was on keys. We were a four-piece. Our first show was in Tasmania, Australia.
Wow.
And it was successful. Nothing went wrong. It was
That's
really
amazing.
nice to just reacquaint ourselves with like an audience in this context of us playing these songs in a big band setting again.
Sure.
It was great.
Did you guys perform like the older songs in the new like did you perform as stripped down versions, or
No,
did you perform them like they were on the record?
No, just like they were on the
Oh,
record.
okay. I wasn't sure if you went if you were like, it's us too, we're just gonna go this way. Okay.
No.
It's a rock
We're
show.
like, that part of the Naked and Famous we weren't worried about because we have so much experience with playing live that we were confident that we would be able to figure out how to put everything back together. So, and oddly, the live members that were part of the band, they were how I would produce the music. So they were my tools. And that's it. Kind of again, like it kind of harks back to my love of music growing up as a kid. I was into rock music, so my idea of how a song was put together was like drums, bass, guitar, keys, and vocals. I had this set of limitations that I thought I felt confident writing for, and the band was that. It was like a nice set of limitations. But then as when they were all gone, it also, on one hand, they can be limited. They're like a nice constructive creative limitation, but it's also a limitation. So making this new music, it was like, well, that sounds good. We like how that sounds. Who cares how we play it live? Because we feel like at this point, it's like, well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out some cool way to do this live that'll be interesting and authentic. And also, I think that maybe some of the ideas that we grew up with about particularly rock music and authenticity and ownership of the sonics they've just disappeared. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember even Dave Grohl at one point, like whinging about, he was like ragging on Skrillex or something, or like, just ragging on people in electronic music, having to just like press play.
Right.
And apparently that's music now and no one's playing it. And even people like him have like lightened up and softened on that kind of angle, because I don't think it matters how it's made. It matters the effect on people.
Sure.
You know, if there's an authenticity behind what you're doing, it doesn't matter what medium or what technology you're doing. And ultimately, it's a conversation about technology. You know,
Sure.
the drums are a technology, and electric guitar is technology. You know what I mean? So, like, who cares if the technology changes? The effect that the art has on people is the part that we're supposed to get excited about.
Right. Yeah, and this new record kind of steers away from the guitars, right?
Yeah,
Like pretty
it's like
much
an afterthought. We
Yeah.
tried to just not pick up the guitar until we were at the end, and we thought this song could do with some guitar.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
Because otherwise,
Tom, I don't know about that guitar. I was always like, we'd write a song, I'm like, can we just mute the guitars? Oh yeah, that sounds good. And then we would play around with different sounding guitars that Tom hasn't really got like explored before, because his kind of guitar that he is like known for is that one note single distortion, like in your face. And I really love that. I love loud, like scratchy sounding guitars. But we got to play with some pretty sounding guitars on this record.
Yeah. So tell me about this new album. I read, Tom, that you said it's kind of like an ode to your story as a band. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, Recover, the title track, the reason we decided that that would be the album title was that the song felt very symbolic. It was the first track from this new record that felt right. So I was waiting at Alisa's house with someone we co-wrote and produced a lot of the tracks on with sorry, and his name's Simon Oscroft. He's an old childhood friend of mine. And we were waiting at Alisa's house in her studio, and she comes bursting into the studio. She'd been running an errand, and she just like arrives home, and she's like, "Guys, I've got it. I've got the song. I wrote it on the drive over here." We were waiting for her, like we were gonna have a songwriting session that day, and she like storms into the room. She's got the song already. We're like, "Okay, cool, sing it. What? Show us what's the song." And she sings the chorus of Recover, just in its entirety. And we're like, "Oh, amazing. Okay." Run over to the piano, run over to the guitar, like pick them up, start like supplementing her melodies with chords, and then we threw together this folk sounding demo in like, you know, less than 30 minutes or something like that. We recorded all these vocals in her hallway and just sang all around her house and her living room and stuff. And that's actually the beginning of the record. Like that demo that we made is the beginning of the album.
Oh wow!
And we took that demo that we made like super quickly, really rough. Just all of us, we created like fake choirs of, you know, we're all singing in a hallway. And then we took that, we sampled that, and we started making a song out of the samples from that demo.
Oh wow!
So we had this like fully organic process, and then this very digital, computer-oriented studio process where we just like, there were no limits to what we could do. And when that song was finished and it came out all in one day, it's basically written, produced, recorded on day one. We were like, that's the process, and that's the song, and here we go. We're on the path to the new album. And then most of it was written very quickly after that. And when we had about like 8 songs from the new album, we went back and looked at some of the older demos that we hadn't recontextualized, and we had this like way to bring them into the 2019, you know, we had a way to update them and pull them into the new sound. So that's kind of like how the new record began as far as the workflow and the creative process. And then the song topics are all very autobiographical because they're
all pretty heavy. I mean, from what I've listened to on the record, yeah. As like kind of not poppy, but like as uplifting as the songs are, some of the topics are pretty heavy in there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just don't think we know how to do anything other than that. I don't think I honestly, like for Alisa and I, it's just like we have to write songs that come from somewhere and have some kind of substantial emotional weight to us. Otherwise, it feels like we're just writing fluff, you know? Like it has to feel like it's like something worth writing about, or something worth talking about, or something that isn't just like mundane. So I think that's just why anything we write about might be slightly dark, or like, you know, even though it's like pop music and it's fun and it is bright and uplifting.
Yes. Yeah, because I mean, like you guys take on like mental illness and equality and recovery. Like there's a lot of big topics on the album.
Grief, loss, healing. All those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long time since we released our last record, 2016. And Thom and I have just lived through so much personally, and change and growing pains, and I think just naturally it would influence the types of songs that we would write.
Definitely. I mean, what's crazy is even now, you know. If you delayed the record 3 months or something, what other topics would be on the album with all that's happened in the past 2 or 3 months?
There's songs on the record where Thom talks about, you know, mortality, because he almost died in 2019. 2018.
No, gosh. It's 2017.
It's 2017. And you know, we were like turning up to my house to write songs. I was like, Thom, you should probably write about these experiences you have. You haven't had a chance to write about them yet. Like, why don't we explore that? And so we wrote Anesthetic and Death.
Wow. Yeah, well, the record is amazing. I love the direction you guys went, like with, especially like I think it's Sunseeker has kind of like it sounds like a children, like the chord. Yeah. I love that. Like, is there like tell me about like those little pieces of the record?
Sunseeker was like the most perfect writing session. Simon Oscraft, the co-producer, co-writer that we worked with a lot, he was actually staying at my house. He was trying to kind of in the transition of moving from New York to LA. I was like, well, this is perfect. Why don't you come and we'll do writing sessions out of my house. It'll just be perfect setup. And so I cooked everyone breakfast. Simon, Thom, and Luna Shadows had come that day. She just came for breakfast and to say hi. She wasn't actually planning on staying and writing with us, but it was just like, oh, why don't you just come join us? Come in the room. She's like, okay. But I fell in love with this beautiful dog and a boy, and we live in a house together, and I would call Ginger my little Sunseeker, because I would often find her just bathing in spots of sunlight in the garden.
My dog will do that too.
Yeah.
Just see him laying on the floor in the sun.
Yeah, so I was just standing at my front door just staring at her. I'm like, oh, look at my little Sunseeker. I'm like, Sunseeker, that's such a strange, cool word. And I was like, hey guys, I have a word that I'd love to talk about, and a concept. And so we went into the studio, and as soon as we started talking, just ideas just started bouncing, and everyone's ideas were catching, and by the time we knew it, we had this song. And when the lyric "Did you know I need you" got put through a sampler, Thom was playing it. He's like, did you know that I need you? We're like, whoa, that's cool. And so Thom's just like doing this, and we're all just doing that, just bobbing our heads, and it's just like such a great vibe.
It's a great song. I love those little elements to it. It's awesome. Their album's coming out. Is it going to be strange for you guys to put it out while we're in quarantine, or what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really difficult because it's, like I was saying before, you know, it's that the thing about touring and visibility. We had plans to get into all these markets and all these places and towns that, you know we have fans, and we can present this album and like put it out into the world and you know, yell about it as much as possible. But unfortunately, this has put not just a huge damper on that, but also it's affected parts of the industry that aren't as obvious. So, I mean, I saw the other day, it's terrible, but The Guardian are letting go of like 180 staff I don't know if you read
Jeez.
The Guardian.
Yeah,
but,
I do actually. Wow.
Yeah, there and I mean that made headlines, but it's not the only publication that is just having to drop huge amounts of people. And music journalism, I think, has suffered a lot over the last 10 years as it's become less and less pivotal for the industry, and as it relies more and more on just clickbait and numbers. Which is, it sucks for the industry, because I miss the old industry. I'm getting old now. I loved print media. Gosh, I did, and I still do. I think it's wonderful, but yeah, it's really struggling. So that, on top of us not being able to make a big enough splash, it's really difficult right now. It's a really terrible time to be trying to put an album out. And of course, we all went into lockdown thinking, oh, well, at least people will be listening to music. And then the next week, that was the thought we all had. I saw stats on it. It was like streaming's down by, like
really?
X percent. Everybody stopped streaming because everyone just wants to watch Netflix and nobody wants to listen to music.
Right.
And then I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, because all that commute time has disappeared. No time to listen to music. And then I think there's something about like the anxiety that people must be feeling. And I get it. I don't want to listen to music when I'm feeling like crap, and I don't know what's happening tomorrow either. I don't want to just relax and just, music's an escape, but like an escape given some degree of certainty. And if people are sitting there like not knowing whether they've got a job tomorrow, or they're really struggling to pay the bills and they're going through real hardship, like the last thing you want to do is just like chuck on an album and zone out for an hour. So I'm going to guess that's why streaming's not doing so well. So who knows? I mean, we'll see. A couple more months and we'll have a better picture, I guess, of how things are going.
What's going down. Are you going to do any like live stream stuff to promote it, or?
Yeah, right now we're in the studio every day, just figuring out arrangements for the songs off Recover that we can play in a live stream, not in a big band setting. So yeah, we're trying to navigate that, and we're just filming ourselves, pretending we're influencers, talking about our songs and what they mean to us and all that stuff that people seem to be interested in us doing. Yeah, so we're trying to make do with what we can do, with promoting a record.
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know. I feel very sad that we can't go on tour and visit places and visit radio stations, and it's so
hopefully sooner than later. Maybe they'll find a vaccine or something before we know it.
So.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun. I have one more question. I want to know if I can get an answer from you guys individually. If you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I know what Tom's going to say. Don't take any advice. I'm not qualified to say anything. I dropped out of high school. Blah, blah, blah. But, one of the things I really hated when I was aspiring musician was when you would hear people say, just follow your dreams. Just follow your dreams and you'll be fine. I'm like, that is the worst advice you could give anybody. Like, that doesn't help anybody. And so I would say to someone, I'm like, what are the types of artists or like people in a creative field that you admire? Like, research, what did they do? Did they go to an art school? Did they do an internship somewhere? Like, do your research, and then also like practice your craft. Just practice. Output. Like, just, it's such a discipline. You got to be disciplined, because if you aren't, you're not going to get anywhere.
I love it. Thank you so much, Alisa.
Yeah, I second Alisa. I think I do think that I think it depends on the kind of person you are, because there are some artists that thrive on their own kind of like gloriously positive ignorance. And, you know, the less they know, the better. You know, the more it helps them move forwards. I think that works for some people. And it doesn't work for someone like me. So if you do find yourself being an artist like myself who wants, who appreciates reason and, you know, logic, or assumes they do, or imagines they do, like myself, I think critical thinking skills. I think critical thinking skills are an exceptional tool to help you move forwards in whatever it is you're doing, because it's kind of the fundamental mental activity to get you all the things that even Alisa was suggesting. You know, critical thinking skills can help you figure out what are your goals, and like, do you even know what your goals are, and what do you need to get those goals? You know, are they realistic? So I think.
How long will it take you to get there? How long do you think it will take you to get there?
Yeah, I mean, like, just
things.
For instance, you know, like a lot of artists feel, I know that a lot of young artists feel like they get like a big break with something, you know, like they get some opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point you start developing the critical thinking skills to go, is it a big opportunity? How many people are going to care about this? Would I care about it? Who's going to listen? Why are they going to care? You know, like, so yeah, critical thinking skills, I think they'll help you whatever field you're in. They will.